This is Rosemary, and you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the interactive interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com. Welcome all Hivelings to another edition of Interactive Wrestling Radio right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. My name is James Walsh, and with an introduction like such, it could only mean one thing. This week we are being joined by what I have to say is the hottest act on Impact Wrestling right now, if not the entire wrestling world. I'm so happy that Impact Wrestling agreed to let us have this interview with the demon assassin herself, the one and only Rosemary. What a fantastic talent. I think this turned out to be a really, really good interview. I hope you guys agree. I'm not going to talk too much, but I just wanted to let everybody know to check out the Global Wrestling Network app as we discuss in the interview, as well as to check out Impact Wrestling Crossroads Thursday night on Pop TV and Impact every Thursday evening on Pop TV as well. I'm not going to talk too much this week. Be sure and check out, by the way, the Ring of Honor pay-per-view happening Friday night. Thank you again to Ring of Honor for last week's guest, Mr. Matt Taven of the Kingdom. And I hope everybody tunes in next week, because you never know what we have up our sleeves next here at Interactive Wrestling Radio. Without any further ado, here is the interview.
Hey, this is Taya Valkyrie, and you're in the Wrestling Epicenter.
This is the Monster Abyss, and you're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. On the Newsmaker line with us right now is one of the hottest acts on Impact Wrestling right now. She is the demon assassin, Rosemary. Rosemary, are you with us?
Oh, there's, yes, pun intended. We do set a flame more often than not.
I love that. That's excellent. So I wanted to ask you, when your character debuted, there's such a Gothic rock and roll feel to it. I didn't know if it was going to catch on the way it has, but now you're literally the star of the show. If anybody doubted that, all they need to watch is everything you did against Hanaya on Impact, as well as your confrontation with Taya. We'll get to that in just a second, but you are definitely one of the more over things there. Did you think that this character could reach the amount of Hivelings that it has?
We knew that it spoke to a certain amount of people. We just perhaps weren't aware of how many there were and how quickly it would happen. We've told this story before, but as Decay debuted in January 2016, late January 2016, and at the end of that month we were doing the UK tour. Now, the episode had not yet aired in the UK for our debut, but we stepped out to do the tapings in Manchester, and the crowd was singing our theme song back to us and already knew who we were. So to have that kind of instant recognition and instant sort of connection with the crowd, then that was perhaps the birth of the Hivelings, as they flocked to us so very quickly and so very instantaneously. To be able to connect that quickly was definitely not expected by any of us. And Decay, we simply went with it and organically became, not necessarily, as you mortals like to say, good guys or baby faces, but we just did what we did, and it happened organically that the people came with us.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, it definitely did. And more recently, you've been friends with Allie, who is definitely a polar opposite of the Rosemary character, and yet it's.
We tolerate Allie. We would hesitate to use the word friend.
I love it. But I remember growing up, and it's like for whatever reason, an evil Doink the Clown was awesome, but a nice guy Doink the Clown was bad. So whenever we see like whenever I'm starting to do it now. Whenever I saw, whenever I saw, a darker character kind of maybe show a little bit of light side to it, I got nervous. But it seems to have just picked up the popularity, and she's stayed the same. It's just the people have started to cheer even more so. So I appreciate what you guys are doing with that character.
The natural mistake, perhaps, to say that we have chosen the way of the light. This is not true. We've never, ever wavered in our allegiance to the shadow and the darkness. It simply has become fact that the shadow has seen fit to protect Allie, and that is what we do. We follow our instructions.
Excellent. So I mentioned it already, but on Impact, you had the return of somebody who you've had a run in or two before with, and that is Taya Valkyrie. Thoughts on the return of Taya Valkyrie?
With anticipation boiling in our veins. When Taya could not appear at Bound for Glory, you could not understand the heartbreak that we suffered to be promised a blood-spattered battle and then to have it taken away is just perhaps we're a shell of ourselves for the entire latter half of the year, not knowing when we would ever see her again. And now she's returned to us. And on the horizon is war, darling. Do not think anything less that could happen between the two of us could not keep the demon and the Valkyrie apart forever. And when we do finally get her in our grasp, face to face, mind you, never mind these little games she's playing, face to face, it will be war and it will be beautiful.
Excellent. And that was actually my next question. You've already touched about it. You were supposed to face a Bound for Glory. There were situations outside of everybody's control that prevented that from occurring. It almost feels like, though, going into that show, Josh Matthews on commentary was quite clear that he was looking forward to that, perhaps more than every other match on the card. Now that we had to wait about 5 months. You think the build-up of that now has actually made it even better for when you guys finally do tie it up?
Absence does make the heart grow fonder, doesn't it?
Excellent. So about a year ago, we did an interview with a former Decay member, which was the Monster Abyss, and he sang your praises. He sang that, obviously he's older than yourself and Steve were, but he said that you guys really brought him back into relevance as well. Thoughts on when you first made your debut with Impact Wrestling being paired with the Phenom, the mainstay of the company, the Monster Abyss?
We've made it no secret that starting our training and even before that, choosing where we would train was heavily swayed by our being a fan of then TNA. Since we've been watching since 2005. We chose to go to Scott D'Amore's school because he had an influence and a connection with Impact Wrestling, and he had trained Alex Shelley, Chris Saber, and Petey Williams. And out of Ontario had come Gail Kim, Tracy Brooks, Angelina Love, and people that we wanted to follow in their footsteps and were making waves. Then in 2009, we believe, the beginning of the Knockouts division, something we wanted to be part of Impact Wrestling, and now we are. So not only were those names that had been trained in Canada, one of our immediate favorites that kept us watching TNA when we first started watching was the Monster Abyss, and somebody we very much adored watching him on TV and watching his work and watching his character. So to be brought in now, 2016, into Impact Wrestling, and to be paired with somebody that we adored so much and looked up to and considered a hero, perhaps, somebody that we very much loved watching his work, and being partnered with him is an absolute dream come true, to not mince words. So and to have his wisdom, his knowledge, his expertise guiding now Crazy Steve and Rosemary and our dark destructive paths as a unit, it was something that was immediately special to us, and perhaps that lent a hand into the way we were received so quickly by the fans.
Excellent, excellent. So I was just looking at my interviews list before I called you, and I've interviewed more women over the past year than I did in the 14 years prior to doing this show, almost combined. And it really speaks to the fact that that is who people are interested in. We're all interested in what the girls, what the women of wrestling are doing, and in a different way than we might have been, say, 15 years ago. It's not about the divas. It's not about that anymore. We take it seriously. We see you guys as on par with the guys. What do you attribute to the women's revolution as it's become known?
The winds of change are upon us. We are not content to be a sideshow, to sit on the sidelines, to allow the boys to run the show. We will be running it with them, just as we did in a very physical representation with DK. Abyss mixed it up, Steve mixed it up, and Rosemary mixed it up, and we all considered an equal share amongst the group. There was no sense of Rosemary must sit in the sidelines because she is a girl. No. Yes, we didn't engage in battle inside the ring for perhaps the majority of the first year, certainly, but we were not afraid to mix it up, to defend our brothers and to get involved when we needed to and direct their attention. So women are not content to sit on the sidelines anymore, not content to be overlooked. Women are embracing the power that we have inside of us and forcing change upon this world.
I'm going to preface this by saying that whether I was speaking to yourself, who's under contract to Impact Wrestling, or if I was speaking to Sasha Banks, who's under contract to WWE, I feel this whole thing started, as you mentioned previously, in 2008, 2009 with the Knockouts division, and that really is the preface of this Winds of Change, as you called it. Would you agree that Impact Wrestling, TNA as it was, has played a huge role in creating this new role for women?
Absolutely. As you said, it was TNA that inspired us to become a wrestler and to go out and get trained. Growing up, we played wrestling with our cousins and our siblings, and that was always something that was fun, and that was based on growing up watching WWE, WWF at the time. But it was not until we became a fan of Impact and learned that Scott D'Amore ran a training school that we decided that this was actually something that we could do and would do and should do and must do, and that Impact was our goal.
Excellent, excellent. And you mentioned Scott D'Amore a few times himself, and fellow Canadian, as you are Canadian. Don Callis is now the creative force behind Impact Wrestling, and in short order, with the change of the ring, with just the feel of the show, it seems to have taken on a new direction. Thoughts on the changes, and how do they feel so far for you as a performer?
Positive, very positive, very, very much so that there is a direction and that there is a clear direction, and it is forward, not backwards, not stagnant. It's moving. They have ideas, and they're going to implement them and have the flow of the show has changed, and as you mentioned, it is very evident to see with I believe 4 or 5 weeks now into the new regime, and it is very much a different feel than it has been for the entire past year, and it's very exciting, and it's very much something that we personally and hopefully the rest of the roster and the rest of the fans and the rest of anyone who's interested to see the growth of wrestling is something that we want to see where it goes and hope that everyone comes along as well. And if you want to take a very good example, it's the Global Wrestling Network. It's not just Impact, although there's a wonderful archive on there of past shows and and uploading the more recent shows after a certain amount of days, there is an outreach of independent promotions now receiving showcasing on this network. So people who perhaps maybe have not had access to them before this time are now seeing how far wrestling reaches and how far it's coming, and growing together is an incredibly important part of moving forward.
Very cool. Well, I'd be remiss not to ask you this, but we've seen you have some incredible input into some of the best things that we've seen on Impact Wrestling over the past 2+ years. Delete or Decay. You were the first woman, as far as I remember. Well, actually, maybe not the first, but you were in a 6 sides of steel match in a women's match. Is there anything out there that's in Monsters Ball? How can I forget Monsters Ball? Some of the matches that you've had are more violent than a lot of things we've seen from women before. Is there any matches that you're eyeing that you're thinking you would love to do that hasn't been done yet in Impact?
Oh, absolutely. Not necessarily that hasn't been done yet in Impact, but not necessarily hasn't been done yet by the Demon Assassin. There has been one, not 6 sides of steel, but Lethal Lockdown, that the Knockouts engaged in 2 years ago in the United Kingdom, and we would love to bring that back for the Knockouts now. Obviously, a bit of an alteration now that we've gone back to 4 sides of the ring rather than 6 sides, so 4 sides of steel for us, but still a Lethal Lockdown. And to be able to up that kind of violence, of course we love taking part in the Monsters Ball. And let's throw a long shot out there. We've yet to have a Knockouts Ultimate X.
That's a hell of an idea. I like that idea.
Mm.
All right,
and we know we're not the only Knockout that thinks that way. Let's put it that way.
Excellent. Well, there you go. A couple more questions, then I'll let you go because I've been given a time frame that I have to stick within. I could talk to you for hours, but it's been a pleasure so far. You're a bit of an enigma. And people with enigmas, as you know, it was true for Sting, it was true for The Undertaker, it's true for Abyss, and it's true for yourself. They come up with rumors, and a lot of things, maybe they're true, maybe they're not. One thing that came out about a month ago is that you suffered a knee injury at an independent show, but there's been no confirmation one way or the other. At all comfortable saying if you are 100% right now?
Difficult to say. These mortal meat sacks are very different from our demon form, and we have yet to receive confirmation on whether or not 100%, but we'll be updating as soon as possible.
Sounds good. All right. One of the big announcements that came out just last week is that Impact Wrestling will be doing a co-event at WrestleCon with Lucha Underground. Lucha Underground is known for doing intergender matches without even thinking about it. Are you at all interested in getting in the ring with a woman, with a man? I mean,
either or, really.
Right.
It would not be our first intergender encounter. Absolutely not. We've done several matches against males, and it is simply a different mindset you bring to battle. But certainly, we would definitely not shy away from such an opportunity.
Excellent. 2 more questions, then I'll let you get on with your day, and hopefully you'll start feeling better. We can all hear that you have a cold. So
again, fragile mortal bodies. How do you live with them?
There you go. One of my friends is Mike Bucci, who was Simon Dean in WWE. He was Nova in ECW. He is a huge fan of yours. He praises you on Facebook almost every time he sees you, and I bet you he wishes he could take something he said back. He said that he thinks you should be Sister Abigail, and that's, everybody seems to have taken that and made that like their original thought. Are you tired of people saying, "Oh, she should be Sister Abigail"?
Don't get us wrong, we adore him. We've recently been corresponding, and he's an absolute sweetheart. Having said that, it's not the thought that we have an issue with. It certainly speaks to recognizing our creativity and recognizing our ability and willingness to be different. however, receiving the same thought tweeted or DM'd you 6, 7, 10, 20 times a day, as you said, as though it was the original thought, it gets a bit tedious. and it makes you start to wonder. That's great that you're writing Rosemary fan fiction in your head, but how about enjoying what we're doing currently? Because we certainly are enjoying what we're doing currently on television and Impact Wrestling. So instead of imagining what isn't and what may never be, what if we just played with the world that we're given and made it amazing?
That sounds great. And the next one's kind of an open-ended question. Heading forward in Impact Wrestling, what is next for the Demon Assassin?
Well, we touched on this already. Taya's still running out there, isn't she? And we just can't let a Cinder Goddess on the loose without keeping her in check.
Excellent, excellent. All right, before I let you go, can I just ask for one last favor from you?
Certainly.
Do you mind giving me, I don't know if you like doing these or not, I get different reports from people who do them. Do you mind giving me a station?
It's not a birthday wish, is it?
No, it's not a birthday wish. It's a station ID just saying this is Rosemary and you're in the Wrestling Epicenter.
Aha, yes, absolutely. This is Rosemary and you are in the Wrestling Epicenter. We had a lovely conversation.
Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you again for being part of this.
You as well.
The Wrestling Epicenter has been around since 2002, and in that time, all of these guests, everybody pictured, has been on our podcast. We're more than just a radio show, though, so check out WrestlingEpicenter.com for all your wrestling news and needs.